have your founder. Invest on thought leadership by your founder. It will create a ripple effect that will be very difficult to create for a LinkedIn page that has 15 followers that part of them are not even your ICP. But the people in the founders surrounding or their network will probably be 80% of your ICP. Typically, if they come from the world of the problem, invest in that. I think that's like low-hanging fruit. They will gain visibility to future investors, to future employees, to future customers, to advisors, whatever. Like I would start with that.
Welcome to the Marketing Academy podcast by GCMO, where in every episode we sit down with a marketing expert to deep dive into a hot topic shaping the industry. I'm Yitzi Tenenbaum. Let's get started. So if you're a marketer, you were likely told in the past that you have to do more with less. You have to save money. You have to cut budgets. It's a tough year. It's a tough industry. This so-and-so deal didn't go through. You have to save money. You have to cut down. I am joined today by Feldman, who is a marketing leader at many startups over the years. And I can probably introduce you, but you'll probably do a better job than me.
Thank you so much for being here, Yitzi. Yeah, sure. So Feldman, my joke is that I call myself Yael in Aroma or other words in Starbucks.
I do that too.
Tactics to get your coffee, no? I mean...
I'll tell you a funny story. I was at RSA, and which is a big conference in San Francisco, and I'm on my way. I walk into Starbucks. I say, hey, could I get a coffee? They say, what's your name? I say, Zach. He's like, no, it's not. I'm like,
they challenge you about your name. That's hilarious.
I'll tell you why. I was wearing the lanyard with the name tag.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh shit.
Fraud at Starbucks. Jeez.
Yep. Like, are you fighting? I'm like, how did he know?
That's so funny. That's
there
hilarious.
You go.
But I mean, everyone has their tactics to get their coffee, so that's mine. 15 years in online marketing. Last 12 years in startup, B2B marketing. I've been in-house, twice VP of marketing in tech startups. Now I'm a fractional CMO and advisor to early stage founders, which is exciting. So doing both strategic work as well as tactical work. And I'm excited to talk to you about lean marketing, which is like, wow. So much to chat about.
You like the small companies, right? Well, what's the largest company you've worked for?
Wow. Probably the biggest company I've worked for, like 80 people max, and I'm being like generous with probably looking at people who are part-time or fractional as well. So tiny company.
I think the smallest company, and in my mind it was like super small, was 100 people.
Wow. We're overlapping.
And hopefully we could give two different perspectives on our topic today. Lean marketing, trying to save a buck. And I feel like today in the world of AI, our executives are like, hey, use ChatGPT, use an LLM. You don't need to hire a graphic designer. You could just do it in whatever tool.
I think it's not only your founders, it's not only your bosses, it's also your investors who are expecting leverage all these, cool tools, which most of them are, let's be quite frank, are mostly beta, or they're good, like, for the distance, but they're not the best robust tools. And you gotta leverage that. You have to constantly set expectations and, do the work and, and deliver. But going back to the point of, being very, very lean, I think you come from large companies. I think we all are feeling the need to like being very, very, very focused on what we got to achieve and leverage the tools that are out there. So AI is a challenge. I mean, even since the past time we've chatted, Base 44, Lovable, all these tools that are supposedly supposed to shorten the distance to do a lot of things are doubling down on the impact that you have to deliver very, very quickly, very, very lean as well. I mean, if Lovable's making, 2 million ARR on a weekly basis with very, very little marketing. So, your investors are saying, then why are we investing so much money on marketing? So you have to constantly, I think the challenge today for marketers is setting the expectations and going back and saying, it's good to a certain extent, but you still have to deliver, really good results in the end of the day. So, I mean, even if you're going and generating, let's take visual and creatives, it's still not quite there. I mean, Gen AI is still generating pictures with 6 fingers, so you still have to manage it. You still have to have people behind the scenes. You still have to give the prompts. I mean, it's not, all right, let's use Gen AI and finish it. So I mean, that's Yeah.
Definitely managing up and managing expectations is a big part. Maybe one of the biggest things that I've done to achieve a goal and save money on the way was I used to, and you know this, doing any type of filming, if you want to bring in a crew, where I am today, when I want to bring in a film crew, it costs me close to 10 grand.
Wow.
I need to bring
Spicy.
6 people. So what I did at least twice so far is I built an in-house studio. Does it come out as good? No.
Luxury of large companies.
But even when I was a 400 person startup, 2 cameras, a bit of lighting, a few mics, like you can go a long way. Doing a podcast doesn't have to be super expensive.
Totally.
Having a someone talking to camera, a talking head, doesn't always have to break the bank. So maybe let's start from the beginning, and maybe we could go through the different industries and worlds and try to understand what can we do in a small startup if I'm a lone contributor, the only marketer, a small team, but then also maybe a large enterprise where we're looking for shortcuts and ways to achieve our KPIs without breaking the bank and without spending crazy amount of money. So I guess a good place to start, and probably the most complex, the most expensive, would be the worlds of demand gen, right?
Yeah. So I think, circling back to what you were talking about, I think, first of all, if you're the only marketer in a company, in a startup, then you have to ask what the focus is. What's the focus? Are we focusing on ARR? Are we focusing on, the amount of customers? What are we looking at? What are the northern stars of the company? What are the KPIs that we're looking at? What goals are we trying to achieve for the next 12, 18, 24 months? Again, that's really kind of like understood across the board with the founders, with investors, and based on that, really kind of like doubling down on what you got to do. So I think so focus is key. Focus is number one. Going back to your question about demand gen, I think it's again, you could do so many things that are, with a string or with a very, very lean budget. So you can, like you said, do a podcast. You can use user-generated content, customers that want to evangelize you, that you can host on your platform or on your blog. Webinars is an amazing tool that I think can be leveraged, and you can people always love speaking about what they are passionate about. But I think really it's about understanding what your ICP is and really having those folks kind of like contribute their ideas of what content they want to consume, where they want to consume it, etc. A podcast is a great idea, but are your listeners is your audience rather, are they listening to podcasts? Are they, listening to webinars? Are they attending webinars? So I think it's really understanding where they are, like fish where the fish is, essentially, where they are, what they do, where they need to get to, and what value can you provide for them that's not pitching them your product, selling them your product, talking about who you are, tooting your own horn. It's boring. No one wants to hear it. I mean, I've been working with founders who say, wow, let's talk about our product. No, it's not about talking. They are not interested in you selling the product to them. They want to hear about how people solve the problems and that they're invested in, what they're looking at, what's interesting for them, what are the problems in the periphery of their professional worlds, where they want to advance in their careers, like what's their pain, but what's their pain in a larger way. And I think that's where a lot of companies struggle to understand like what their ICP is looking at. It's not only about, the boring B2B content that's about the specific problem that I'm solving, talking specifically about my product. It's not. We have to like shift away from that. Some founders are like, in love with their solution, but they have to fall in love with the problem and understand, and fall in love with their audience. Like become very intimate with their audience, what they're talking about, where they're talking about it. Are they on LinkedIn? Are they on Reddit? I mean, it's not also automatically go to LinkedIn and publish on LinkedIn. If your ICP is not there, if your ICP is very traditional finance folks, are they on LinkedIn? Do they know LinkedIn? Do they log in? I mean, I'm on LinkedIn all day long. I have friends who laugh at me. That's like probably my most used application, but is your audience there? Like, are they there? Are they consuming their content through there? Are they learning there? Are they developing there? And those are the questions that you need to ask yourself when you create this demand gen. And once you understand that, it's very easy to understand what you do and what you're not doing, like where you're not focused on, or maybe you want to put in a bank of ideas for later on, and kind of like the combination of both the focus of the company as well as where I want to focus my efforts now, the low-hanging fruits, or creating. I think sometimes startups have like you have to play the game of short-term, which is like low-hanging fruits. How do I increase my pipeline, etc.? How do I get more users? How do I get testimonials, etc.? And long-term, you're building a brand. In the end of the day, you want a brand that's sustainable and known, etc. So it's like playing that game of where do I invest my 20% of efforts that are long-term and the 80% that's kind of like shorter term. So
I'm sure in smaller companies, it's a lot harder to explain to the founders that it's going to take 12 months and 18 months.
Truly.
But I do really like what you said is you could spend a very small amount of money on a Google ad or a Meta ad and have it like go such a long way, or you could spend a boatload of money, but if the message is wrong, if it's not engaging, if they don't care about it, if they're not on the platform, you could spend all the money in the world. You're not going to drive whatever the KPI is. So it needs to be a message that resonates.
A message that resonates, and also to have an infrastructure. I mean, if you don't have the right keywords on the website, if you don't have content that supports you, if you have like a small, lean website, probably don't invest on, like LinkedIn ads or even Google ads in the beginning. It's not going to help you. You're going to get like very raw leads, and you have to like, even look at, what the key terms are, or what the keywords are, what their volume is, etc. I mean, it's like tactics. They need to be, it's like a domino effect in the end of the day. You have to invest in sustainable content. I'm a huge believer in content. Like, you have to have good content, and in small startups, you have to have good content, but like smart content, so you can repurpose later on to videos and carousels on LinkedIn and chisel them down to infographics. I mean, like, use it in a smart way that creates like a bank of ideas that you can come back to and use. I think, yeah.
So I'm not familiar with the very small startup. I would be really interested to know, what is smart content? How do I build that one piece that I could use again and again in different ways and different formats? What would that look like?
I think there are a couple of ways to get into smart content. I think one of them is, I mentioned before, user-generated content. Like, if you want to create, for example, we've created, with one of my startups, we created like an ebook that sourced ideas from, top 40 thought leaders in the industry, taking tips. So we took like the basic structure from them, tips, and we expanded it to, a large ebook that talks about a specific industry and, where the trends are going to and where, et cetera. So, I mean, that's something that you can build so many things around. So you can create so many teasers for that ebook. And then moving forward, all the people who contributed to this ebook will also want to evangelize it and post it on whatever social media they're using, whatever, whether it be LinkedIn, Meta, X.com, whatever. So, I mean, I think that there are a lot of things that you can do like that, and then you can create a report based on that. Here are the trends that we identified. So you have to like be always creative about how you take that little piece of content that didn't cost you a lot of money, because you took, you sourced it from 40 folks who contributed generously their ideas. Typically people like to share their ideas, etc. If it doesn't require them to, generate a whole blog post or whatever, they're happy to contribute. And then really take it from there and be creative about the ways that you're gonna distribute it and take that. So I think that would be number one. Then you can, host them on webinars, those folks, and you can expand it and really think about it. It's one piece of content that didn't cost you any money. You, to even send it to someone on Fiverr, or even, did it on Canva or whatever, and it didn't cost you any money, and it creates, ripples of effects. And I think that's the way that, companies should be looking at creating content. Because again, you're not, when you approach people and you're not selling to them, they're happy to share their experience, share their ideas, share whatever, what it is. So I think that's one aspect. And then I think in today's world, you got videos, and you can generate videos very, very quickly, rather quickly, on, HeyGen or etc. and even take those pieces of content and create gifts. And I mean, there's so many things that you can work on. So I think that's kind of like it. And then you create that. You mentioned demand gen, you do that. So I think, again, you don't have to have a robust plan of, a year ahead of content that will distribute in this and that way. This is something that you can, it's like evergreen. It keeps on giving. It's like a gift that keeps on giving, and you can continue and develop that. And you can write a whole quarter on such a piece of content and then revisit it and then do another version the next year. I mean, when I worked in an HR tech company, we did like a D&I calendar, okay? We did it every year. We did it like an edition, and we did it for like probably like 4 or 5 years straight. And then we were asked for people, people asked us to purchase it and use it as material in university, and that's amazing. I mean, that's insane. And in the end of the day, we hardly invested anything. It's like we invested. I will say we did invest in printing it and sending it to thought leaders, and we used it as a piece of swag that we gave out on conferences. So it's like you have to just be a little bit like creative to think what will be the right piece of content that will land. But I think it's a lot of A/B testing and.
Right. Definitely checking things out. I love when companies will spend a ton of money on one thing, and then there's like a random woman in her car talking about something about the topic, like waiting, picking up the kids. And that video just blows up to like in no way. The thing is, the company will then try to recreate it or do something similar. Won't work. There's something there and you can't explain it. And that's where the testing will come in and just A/B testing and seeing what works. And
sometimes it's the X factor. Like you never know like what's going to happen. And some things are like, well, if I give you this example, it reveals like how old everyone was in this industry. But like there was this video of got people like in an office, and then they're like going crazy, and then that became every company in the world did that as their Christmas video, and it became insane. And tachlis, what are those people? They were standing in the office and then they were like dancing. There's nothing like mind blowing here, but it took off. And I think you never know what's going to happen. And sometimes you can repeat it year after year and duplicate the success, but sometimes it's a one-time deal and you never know. It's like a one-song hit in a way, or one band hit.
The saddest thing that I see, usually from larger companies, is when a trend happened and all the small companies get on it, and then the large company, like 4 months later, like get onto the trend, and you're like, wait, what is happening now? You missed this so long ago. But what I did like, Peira, is your the idea of bringing thought leaders, and they don't have to be customers. They could just be a person who's in your industry, and that's good in two ways. A, it's not me talking, I'm not selling, you're getting to hear from someone who's cool from the industry, but also there's a good chance that you could then pitch to that person. You have their phone number, you're in contact with them, they're getting to know you, they're getting to know your company. So that's kind of a sub reason to do this type of content.
Totally. And I think even more so, if they're not going to buy, if they're not in the market to buy your product, then they might be interested in, evangelizing you. And that's the best thing, like talk about you in rooms you're not in, and they can talk and they can intro you to their colleagues and their friends or whatever, and mention, like name drop your name in Slack groups or whatever that you don't have access to because you're a vendor for the sake of discussion. You can also recruit them to be in your advisory board, and then you got an abundance of knowledge there of someone who's your ICP, so to speak.
Even if they're not your customer?
Yeah, definitely. Advisory board doesn't have to be necessarily your customer. I mean, it's someone that you want on your... There's a discussion about who should be your advisors, and I advocate that your advisors in a startup should be people who are well known in their industry and are subject matter experts. It's not about bringing like a quote unquote generic marketing and sales advisor. You need someone who knows the market. Like, let's say if you're working on a startup that works on MarTech, you want to bring someone who's like a CMO, well known in the industry, seasoned person. You don't want to be just someone. You don't want to bring someone random that doesn't necessarily know the ICP is. Maybe MarTech is not the best, but medical tech or reg tech or dev tools or cloud or whatever. You want to bring someone that knows the industry, knows the ins and outs, and can actually advise you on what you're doing. So I mean, you don't want to, and it doesn't have to be a customer. it has to be someone that believes in the product, understands the problem, understands the solution, understands the other solution in the market and why. They can give you so much insight about what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. And you talked about messaging before. I think those folks are like, when I use my advisory board as people who I even send my Google Ads to say, hey, does this lingo sound okay to you? Is this interesting? Is this like, and always exploring ideas. You have to be like, you're always shopping as a lean startup marketer. Your radars are always on for ideas, for inspirations, for real-time stuff. Like if you did something 4 months after the trend, then you've missed the train, dude. Like there's no nice way to say it. You always have to be like in mode on, like, always on air and always seeking for inspirations. I have like a gallery on my phone of like screenshots of, oh, this is so cool, something that I saw on LinkedIn that I can adapt and take. I think that's also a really good, I guess, advice or piece of advice or tip for, startup marketers. You don't have to invent the wheel. If something's working well, just duplicate it. Like, understand how you can adapt that idea to your industry and, check the waters, see if it works, if it's interesting. If it's interesting, great, then, keep moving. And if not, talking about A/B testing, then just, ditch it and go to something else. But I think, so.
No, but that's true for small companies and startups who kind of need to hack the system a little bit more. But I would advocate, even in gigantic companies, no matter where you're a marketer, you want to come up with that out-of-the-box idea, with that unique perspective or something that's a little bit crazy. And you know what? If you're not pitching ideas that are crazy and your managers are telling you absolutely cannot do that, you're probably not bringing the right ideas. I enjoy bringing ideas that I'm told, that's crazy, you can't do it. Because when you do enough of them, sometimes it's just crazy enough that the result will be cool and they'll let you do it.
Totally. And I think sometimes we forget, like, we think that the ICP is like a box. We're pitching to Coca-Cola. We're pitching to whatever, like a, Fortune 2000 company. But in the end of the day, you're pitching to people and you're creating that human connection. And if you wanna, and I love those crazy ideas. Why? Because I think they work. Like, look at data rails, okay? Data rails, I think, is a really good example for like marketing outside of the box. Who are they? Their ICP is CFOs. On paper, the most boring folks on the world, right? But I think that Data Rails captures the emotions behind the frustration of spreadsheets, etc. And I think they deliver it in such a brilliant way, remembering that those CFOs are people and that they get angry and frustrated, in their day-to-day work. And how do you, and I think the work that they're doing, like, the videos and LinkedIn posts are amazing. And I think that's like the crazy ideas. And I think if you're not doing something crazy, you'll be the boring corporate selling to another corporate, and it's going to be really difficult to rise above the noise. And that's the challenge for both small companies and big companies. I mean, wherever you are, you gotta rise above the noise. We're all surrounded in, attention economy. We're all on constantly on our phones and our whatever, and the crazy ideas are going to get, they're going to gain and they're going to get the attention. And I think that's where, I think also as Israelis, like as, Israeli startup marketers, we're a little bit like, quirky in that way. Let's bring those crazy ideas. And I think like crazy ideas should be appreciated. So, I mean, I remember scrolling on LinkedIn and I saw like a purple squirrel on, one of the brands, so detached. I'm like, this is so cute. It's caught my attention. So, I mean, we want to catch the attention and we want to capture, so people will, stop scrolling in their feed and get your banner or white paper or whatever that is. So I think that's a challenge that's, I think it's common for both, it's the same, it's common grounds for the same, for large companies, marketing and marketing for startups. I think that's where we all have to be a little bit more crazy, a little bit more creative, a little bit more like out of the box. What's going to be the next move that we're going to do, whether you're in a conference or webinars or whatever, like that's where we're going in the end of the day. So
I really like what you said around B2B companies need to start looking and acting like B2C. And I think that's a trend that we're starting to see more and more of, is bringing B2C methodologies of excitement, of fun. You have to remember that CFO is a person.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I think until very recently, it was, here's an 8-page white paper of why we're awesome. And I feel like that is dying. It's not dying, it's still there. but the companies are trying to come up with ideas that are, we know from the B2C world, and bringing it into enterprise, into B2B, just making it exciting, making it interesting, making it fun. And if you have a super technical solution about data, whatever, how can you, and in my case, cybersecurity, which the cybersecurity people will excuse me, it's not the most exciting. But how can we give it a spin that makes it compelling, makes it fun, makes it interesting? And I think that B2B companies are learning more and more from the B2C world in that regard.
Totally. I think that we have to embrace more like B2C methodologies, or, you know, the way of thinking, definitely, and implement it in our day-to-day work. And I think it has to be present in our banners and our website messaging. Can be another augmenting the cybersecurity space. Who cares? It's not interesting. Like, we have to ditch the buzzwords, really ditch the buzzwords, and talk to the sentiment of our clients. And I think that's why, and that's kind of like you see in the past couple of years, it's not only the B2C aspect, but, you know, the voice of the customer, like what's bringing them to you, and constantly being in the place that's iterating and reiterating and going back and understanding, like, what's the pain now, how does it compare to the last couple of months, and going and doing that research and being on constant. Like, there's a company that I worked with, small startup, that didn't refresh their ICP or messaging for 2 years, and I'm like, you have to revisit this, not every month, of course, and you can't change whatever you're looking at, but adapt it and look at, you know, make the small changes. It's so important to see what's important for them. What are the trends? What are they looking at? What are they afraid of? I don't know, regulations or compliance stuff or competitors or new acquisitions. You have to always be, I think the first thing that I always do when I come to a company is, you know, put the relevant keywords on Google Trends and Google, what's it called, notifications? I don't know.
Google Alerts.
Google Alerts. And I put that on my automatically. That's the first thing I do. The main keyword. So I'm informed about everything that's happening in that industry, and I know what's happening with competition, with trends, with whatever, and I'm constantly sharing it. You know, going back to that and understanding, you know, how I can create content from it, how it can make us, you know, stand out, the company. So I think, like, you have to be always understanding what's happening in the industry and playing that game of what's in it for the companies, what's in it for the individuals, and understanding the landscape. And things have been changing like crazy in the past couple of, not even years, months, weeks, whatever. Like, you know, so I think that's a crucial thing to be with, you know, always constantly checking the pulse and understanding what's shifting, and, you know, how your ecosystem is evolving. Is a very, very important thing. And I think that goes for anyone. In if you're in a startup or if you're in a big company, you have to understand what the trends are and where the wind is blowing, and really get to know that, and understanding that the people that you're selling to are people. They're human beings. They go back from work. They're frustrated from the day at work. They're looking forward to the Super Bowl game, whatever. Like, you have to, they're human beings. And I think that the best way to learn this is even when you're creating swag for, you know, in conferences. So, I mean, gone are the days that we're looking at yet another, like, phone charger. I think Udi Ledergo once, I asked him, like, what would be the best, if you have to invest in one piece of swag for a conference, what would you do? And he said, you know, like a plush doll or something that someone can bring for their kids from the conference. It's not about, you know, another cover for the camera. Yay. I mean, it has to be something that will speak. And I think that's understanding that, you know, the person that's coming to your booth or whatever is a human being, and to treat them accordingly, I guess.
No, for sure. And this is true if you have all the money in the world, right? You need to understand. And when I look at ICPs and when I look at defining the persona, I'm a huge fan of defining personas. And this week at the product marketing course at GCMO, I gave a 3-hour lecture about personas. And to sum up those 3 hours, I'm a big fan of not only looking at, you know, the classic challenges and goals and what they're looking to achieve, but go down deeper in understanding their deeper motivation. What do they care about? What do they wake up in the morning? What are they looking to achieve? I really like what you mentioned, and maybe this is something that we should do more of, is what are they reading? What podcasts are they listening to? Who are the influencers that are they listening to? What channels are they on? Yep. Try to find that, and then how do I connect to that as opposed to wake up in the morning? I think there are many founders specifically who they are always the smartest person in the room, and they know better, and they know their customers, and they will tell you what your customer wants. And what I really like when I go to conferences is, or just meet a customer, is look at the twinkle in their eye. When they talk about something, what is that gets them excited? Because if I could understand that and tap into that, I think that's where the value's at.
Totally, and I think that's where you crack the code. Like, I think to your point about identifying who the people are, I think also making even like differentiations between what the ecosystem is. Like, I don't know, a CFO in New York is very different than a CFO in Alabama. I mean, like, you have to understand like what the challenges are, whatever. Like, even, I don't know, what the weather is there. I once hopped on a call with a potential customer, and there was like, they were prepping. She didn't cancel the conversation, but they were like preparing for, I don't know, a cyclone or a tornado or anything, like, you know, a disaster that happens in the southeast. And you have to be sensitive to the fact that people are going through things as human beings. And I think tapping into the human factor in this is really crucial and really important. And I think that's something that sometimes we as Israelis think that we get the U.S. or we get Latin America, which is like also composed of like, you know, tiny states like Brazil and Argentina that, you know, they have different languages and not even talking about localization. I'm talking about just understanding the people and the human beings. So I think that's a super important point.
And I think it's our role as marketers. We often see ourselves as, hey, we need to take the product and bring it to market, right? We need to build a website. We need to buy an ad. We may want to make a TikTok video or whatever it is. We want to buy Google Spend and do all that fun stuff. But I think our role is to come back to the company, to the product team, to R&D team, and say, why are we building this? Who is this for? How are we providing them value? Because you could have the best campaign ever, but if the product doesn't meet the market's fit, then what do we do here? And so I find myself, I don't think a day goes by where I don't ask. Now, I'm a product marketer, so it's a little bit more in my wheelhouse, where I'll ask a product manager, why are you doing this? Who's this for? Who's your customer? Who's the buyer? Who are you providing value? Is it the same person? Are they in the room? Do we have to bring them in? Right. So questions of making sure that, and I think that's our role as marketers, also to be outbound. But especially if you're a lone contributor, you need to be inbound. You need to come and say, hey, this is not exact. Doesn't have the right fit. This is not right for the culture, for the persona, for the story we want to tell. It doesn't fit into our narrative. So I think we have that outbound, and it's a lot. I think it's more natural for many of us as the creative, out-of-the-box thinkers. But there is a role of inbound, of looking at that market and bringing that information back.
Totally. And I think 100%, like every word is like gold. But I think especially if you're in early stage startups, you know, you're the probably only marketer sometimes, and you hold product marketing under your belt. And I think that's, even as a CMO, product marketing was the last thing that I kind of like recruited for, and I always held that under my belt, because you're coming up with all these creative ideas, but also you're downloading insights from the market and bringing that to the founding team, to the product team, to customer success, to sales. Like you're in the crossroad of all these functions in the company, and you want to enable everyone, but you also want them to understand that maybe it has to be a little bit, you have to hone on the messaging a little bit more, and you have to tweak it, and especially, I think data also plays a really crucial role here, because you always want to look at, okay, so you came up with this amazing white paper, cool. You've worked with ChatGPT to refine the title and everything, and the visuals are fantastic, but you didn't get a lot of impressions, and you can measure it. Like today, we're fortunate enough to say, hey, this is the traffic we got. This is the click-through rate. Maybe it probably didn't resonate, and then you can do all the modifications, etc. But totally, I agree with the fact that you need to bring this information to the knowledge of the relevant stakeholders. I mean, sometimes, and I think that's the best proof sometimes when I work with founders that say, you know what, I'm definitely not the decision maker here. Let's have the audience, decide, and let's see what they think about, this idea. Let's test it before we commit. And I think that's where, you have to be like, I'm sorry, this is going to be very cliche, but data driven. I'm sorry, like we're all barfing by now with this, but I think you have to understand that in the end of the day, it's a numbers game. Like it's traffic, it's impressions, it's who's coming in, who's coming out. Is it your relevant ICP? You have to always understand, it helps you gauge where you're going to, if you're going the right direction or not. Are you getting signals from the market that you're going the right direction or not? And I think that we have to be very conscious to that. I think, and again, plays the same in, larger companies and smaller startups, but I think in probably different volumes. But I think you always want to understand that. And that really helps you determine what your next step is going to be. You test small, you understand if it's working or not, and then you continue moving forward.
I start every day looking at the data, the sales data, the marketing data, what is resonating, what isn't. What is, I try to replicate and do more of. What isn't, I want to understand why and then fix and correct. And I think that's the way to understand where you're going and to, as you say, it's such a dynamic industry. And what we do is so dynamic. And I think that has to be driven by the data. And it may be cliche, but it is true.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think when I come to founders and they say, yeah, well, we tried marketing activity XYZ, it didn't work. I say, okay, but I'm not convinced that it's not working for your audience. I would, let's test it again and try it again. If it's not, like a very expensive effort or whatever, let's try it again. Let's see. Okay, so you did a webinar, it didn't work. I don't know. There are so many factors of failure and success. Let's analyze. Let's understand why it didn't work. Let's bring other people. Maybe we ran the live webinar in a time that's not convenient for people on the East Coast, West Coast, whatever, where your audience is. Let's understand. Let's break it down to those building blocks and understand and build it back to something that could be successful. Let's, repeat that process a couple of times and understand what we can learn from each of again, but I think it goes back to, choosing what activities you're going to be focusing on and really focus on a couple of activities. You can in a lean startup, but even that goes for every role even. You can't do 100 things at a time. You want to do a couple of things and do them well rather than, spreading yourself thin and doing so many things. And then it's okay, mediocre outcome, etc. I think one of the biggest challenge right now, you have to be everything you do has to be world class. So I think...
Because of the noise.
Yeah, because of the noise, because the expectations of your audience. They don't want to see something that's half baked. They want to see something that's even a small startup can't behave like a small startup. You have to cast a very big shadow and imitate the bigger companies in your ecosystem. But you have to look like a startup. You can't afford to look like a clunky startup that's sitting in WeWork in Tel Aviv. You have to look more serious. So everything that you do, whatever you do, if it's swag in conferences or if it's your website or blog post, whatever, has to be not excellent, but really good.
Right, for sure. If the content, and I'm not hearing myself. Hello. Yep.
ואז בסוף נגלה שהכל
just started.
אוקיי.
Testing.
תדברי את רגע.
היוש?
אותה אני שומע.
אוקיי.
כן, אתה באמת פתאום לא מופיע.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
זה שיר מעולה. יפה, הנה. עבד?
לתקן אני לא יודעת.
Wait, no, still nothing.
לא, אז באמת זה שלך וזה לא עולה, אבל...
משהו התנתק אולי?
Wait, there you go.
הופה, הנה משהו כנראה במגעים.
לא נגעתי בזה. That's so... Wait, okay.
הציוד של גוגל כל כך איכותי שנגיעה קטנה.
That, ladies and gentlemen,
הנה, עזרנו לרגע.
is marketing.
לתת המלצה?
כן.
לרדת לדוגמאות או משהו כזה, משהו שאפשר לקחת
משהו סבבה.
מה אתה אומר?
Okay, yeah, I'll, so are we back? We're good? Yeah, okay. Okay, so I have a good message, and my message is resonating, and it's aligned with my ICP, and it's really hitting home. What are those 3-5 low-hanging fruit that I can look at in a startup or in a big company? What are those few activities that are not super expensive that will have a pretty big impact?
So I think, I, again, a believer in content. So I think webinars and good content. Focus on one good report, one good white paper. We gave examples earlier about how to distribute it and how to, chisel it down to small pieces of content. I think partnerships is a really good place to, reach out to either, join a marketplace if you're in the cloud, data, etc. Ecosystem, or anyone that could be relevant, that can be either your reseller or someone that you can do some co-marketing activities with, etc. And I think today you have a lot of programs that bridge between small startups and large companies, so it's not so difficult to make that connection. And I think, large companies today like the innovative small startups that can develop something out of, whatever, versus other things. So I think that's something that I would always try. Cold outreach. I know it sounds like, even border cliche, but I believe in outreach. Like, I pride myself to be the first BDR in every company that I work in. I do it myself. I feel the waters. I go from my profile, from the whatever founder's profile, and I go and test the waters, and I reach out and I speak to people, and then you get your name out there. I think that's a really powerful tool. Now, it can't be high token, blah, blah, blah. I see that you're interested in sports, whatever token that is. Let's have a conversation. It has to be more personalized. You have to, go the extra mile and invest some time in understanding what the motivations are. Again, remembering that our, customers are people. Shocking. But understand, look at materials that they wrote. But it has to be not like, premeditated email that's repetitive, whatever. I get so many junk messages on LinkedIn that don't even spell my name correctly. So I'm like, I know that you're not but I think that's something that I would definitely invest in. Again, not every company has the bandwidth or that motion could fit for them, but I think it's a cost-effective effort. You have automations today that you can put in place once you do have a connection with some folks. So I think those would be 3 pillars that I would start with. Also, events. I think that, we always think of events as something that's like a money drainer for a lot of companies. You can do events on a very small budget. Come well prepared, reach out to people who can potentially be at the conference, buy them coffee. People like interacting with other people in conferences. Come, be your own booth. Go to a conference. You don't have to be in the startup pavilion or whatever and be lean and whatever. And you don't have to invest $400,000 in a huge booth with LED screens, etc.
I will say you're outdated. $400,000 is nothing. For booths now.
Never spent $400,000 on a booth. I think the most expensive conference.
That's cheap.
No, I understand, but I mean, I would I've worked with companies that you maximize your effect and you try to be as lean as possible. And the most I've paid for a conference was, and this is going overboard, is $50,000.
I think what a lot of companies will do today is they will go to the hotel and they will rent a suite, and then they'll just have meetings in that suite. But I'm with you. Even if you don't even have where to do the meetings, you just invite people to coffee and you send your founder and you set up meetings all day and all night, and they meet customers and you don't need a booth. I will say, though, for the bigger conferences, you can buy also the small booths, or even you mentioned partners. I could mix those too, right? Sometimes a partner will give you a space at their booth. There are things that you can do also on a budget.
Totally. I mean, I think you always want to, there's real estate, right? You have a shirt, you have a t-shirt, make it stand out. It needs to be I remember a couple of years ago in a company I worked in, we went to AWS and we... Reinvent. And we made t-shirts that stood out then the CTO of Amazon came to us. Like he came to our because the t-shirts, caught his attention. So I mean, you want to find the small thing that will bring people to you or will draw attention. Put sassy copy on your t-shirt, whatever. And I think you're always thinking about, I have real estate. I have that. How do I maximize it and use it? But also do the legwork before the conference, and of course the follow-ups afterwards. Like you have to come very, very well prepared. So it won't be. You have to understand like what the ROI from conferences are, and clarify it to everyone that's involved. Whoever's going to the conference, the founders, the BDRs, the sales folks, what the expectations are. We're opting for X opportunities from this, and for everyone to be on the same page in terms of what we want to expect. Of course, it's a great brand awareness event as well. And of course, if you can have a speaking opportunity, amazing. If you can stand on the stage and you have people that you can put on that stage, that's fantastic. But I think like even the basic stuff, I just had a conversation today with a founder. He's going, to a really big conference. I said, bring something with you in your bag, small swag that you can give people that you're meeting. It doesn't have to be a big, whatever, cups or mugs. It could be something small and significant, so they, remember you in the end of the day because you gave them something. You're exchanging material. So I think everything that looks like, I'm putting aside paid media, but any like efforts that can be done in a large scale could also be done in a smaller scale, and just you have to be a little bit smart about and creative about how you go about and do it.
You have to hack the system. You have to
constantly
look at the game and see how you can move the pieces that will give you the highest impact with the least of spend. And events are great ways to do that. And every conference I go to, especially the larger ones, you always find people who have an idea. There are people who wear their t-shirt and walk around. Obviously, I prefer when you come prepared and you have those meetings set up. But you'll find small companies that will reach out to you before and set up a meeting. You'll meet companies that will just walk the floor and bump into people and get to know people. It's not ideal, but there's always if there's a will, there's a way.
I also think the Israeli chutzpah of going to someone and saying, "Hey, I'm from," and like being a little bit salesy and embracing those. I think those traits. I think that's super crucial as well.
Is there a place? We spoke a lot about organic content. If I do have money, how would you spend it when it comes to more like digital marketing? Would you put money on Google Ads, and is there a way to do that in an effective way?
That's a good question. I think that really depends on what, where I'm going at and what are the digital assets that are available for me. If I'm looking to test the waters, I'm looking for understanding what my product market fit is, what the keywords are, etc., then a landing page is enough. And a book a call or like a good call to action. I think that's good, to get your first interest and gauge what the market is about. But I think with digital marketing, it has to be on scale. Like you have to understand what your volume is, what the competition is, what their CPC is, etc. But I think sometimes you just want to also not go to the main keywords and just like hack the way to smaller, long tail keywords, and then, just attach a landing page or distribute even content, which is cheaper on Google, not necessarily on LinkedIn. But I think that those are the activities that I would do. For LinkedIn, if I don't have a nice budget, I wouldn't even go there. I spoke with a founder who said, I have $500 for LinkedIn. I said, a day? She said, no, for a month. I said, forget it. That's not going to work. Let's set expectations here. And I think we spoke before about focus. I think setting expectations is like the second important role that a marketer has. You have to always set expectations. It's not, if you $500 on LinkedIn a month is you're not gonna walk a distance in terms of like getting your brand out there, but doing organic stuff will work. But back to your question about budgets, then I would really just do it elsewhere, or go to paid partnerships with significant publishers in my industry that own email lists or webinars, whatever. If I'm spending money, then I would spend it on somewhere where my ICP, well-defined ICP is, set expectations, etc., and do some, paid activities to get my, brand out there. To, I think having also a publication evangelizing you as something that also kind of like gives you like the stamp of approval. So I would spend my money there.
Right. So find that super, super specific world and kind of work there. I feel like in the gig economy with freelancers and with vendors, they're always so expensive.
Yeah.
How do you approach that on a budget?
That's a really difficult question. I think, first of all, setting KPIs is always important. Like every vendor I worked with, digital marketing, content, etc., we set, KPIs and expectations ahead of time. This is what I expect. What the turnaround will be if we're talking about content or design, and if I'm talking about digital, LinkedIn, Facebook, etc. This is where I need to get. It's not about MQLs. It's not about leads. It's not about traffic. This is where I want to get. The KPIs are opportunities, whatever my KPIs are. Yes, it is expensive, but I think again, like what's the outcome? Like it's very easy to calculate what the ROI is on such activities, and I think being a sole marketer in a startup, you can't wear all hats simultaneously, and if you want to spread out and branch out and not bring people in us, then there's a price, right? Like if you need a content writer, then bring them in. I think we started with AI. I think it's a good place to kind of like revisit it, that AI does shorten the distance. Like you still need a content writer to edit your AI generated materials and make, the tone of voice sound familiar. And I think, creativity is where AI fails. And even with the first, with the initial brainstorming of the ideas and trends, etc., that's where AI doesn't necessarily do such a great job. So I think that's where you can limit the costs of your hires and bring them where you're 80% baked, and then for them to do like the extra mile of bring their pizzazz and creating something that's like world class and amazing. Yeah, human resource is expensive. What can you do? But today you have sources like Fiverr and other resources to get people who can help you complete the job.
I always struggle between quality and price, right? Like you don't want to spend a crazy amount of money, but you also don't want crappy quality. So like trying to find like where
you got to balance it out.
You got to balance it out. And by the way, I talking about Upwork and Fiverr, I worked at a large company, 7,000 employees, where also when it came to video, they would price like crazy. And what I would do is I found some woman from Pakistan on one of these freelancer websites, and I would say for a fraction of the price, but even less, they did an amazing video, crazy work. And that's also something that you probably know better than anyone. Once you find that freelancer that you love,
you want to embrace them.
Like I would even fight like with internal, like it's like almost a monogamous relationship where you're like, do I want to give you my graphic designer?
Not sharing my people. Yeah, I mean, I try to be generous with the people I work with because I want them to get some more gigs. But also, I think it's a relationship of I'll help you, but when I need you, so you got to come back. But yeah, I think it's look, I think in the end of the day, you want to be lean and mean, and you want to be very conscious about costs. And I think those Fiverr and Upwork and whatever provide good work in the end of the day. So
and you have to find that one or two or three people that you're happy with, and
totally.
Then we go back to the A/B testing, and I think that's a theme that we're seeing a lot here. Try things out, see what works, and try to replicate it.
Yeah.
Tools. Marketing tools are not cheap either.
No.
What tools can I use to help me, again, do more with less?
Look, I have a love-hate relationship with HubSpot.
Okay.
Because I like HubSpot. I think it's aiming to be a little bit more than it can be. But I think for startups, it's a good place to have a CRM and an automation and potentially also CMS. Like it can give you some things to get you off the ground and start your operations, like, landing pages, etc. You don't have to source things, on a $1.90 or whatever. So I think that's a good place to start. And then it also gives you analytics, the basic stuff. But I think each startup should have like, the basic suite of tools that will help them depending on, what trajectory they are at and what they're looking forward to achieve, etc. But I think those, you want to be rather lean because these tools are rather expensive. You want to be lean in the beginning and then commit to, like Salesforce. Does this early stage startup need Salesforce? I don't think so. Like there are adequate solutions in the market in the future when you're big, when you have a large operation, when you need to have a robust CRM, whatever, of course, shift to Salesforce or whatever. But I think for the beginning, you can settle for, leaner solutions that can provide you with a lot. So I would go for things like that. Just you want to make sure that everything is connected together. Like my advice would be, you want to bring someone that will tie everything in, define, your stages correctly, etc. So you can have the data flowing. But from that, it's kind of like easy sailing for an early stage startup.
A lot of startups then run into that issue when they have to switch from their mid-tier product to the top-tier product. Yeah. But I'm a big fan. For almost every super expensive solution, there is a very adequate like mid-tier product that will do almost the exact same thing. I would encourage listeners to not go with the big name at all times and look what's out there. Do yourself the favor and do the quick Google search. Try to find, okay, there's the top tier that everyone's familiar with, but what's the third and fourth product? You could get it at half price, and the capabilities, the core capabilities are there, and you're getting the 80-90% that you would need. Yes, maybe in a year or two you will upgrade and you'll do something,
which is great. Like, rooting for everyone who can upgrade. But I think my only like add-on for that would be make sure that your integrations are in place. Like, you want to make sure that all the systems are talking together and that there's no glitches or discrepancies between the data that each platform provides. It's important like to have a suite of tools that comes together. But yeah, I mean, you don't have to have everything from the beginning set, structures from the start. You can be more scrappy about it. And I think you have a lot of AI-based tools as well. So
right, which are just starting out that you could probably get at a discount at this point.
Or even be a beta user. That's even better.
That's even better. Wow, Peira, we talk about a ton of stuff and a lot of good ideas on how to be smart about your spending. We started out talking about getting the message right, and I think that's true no matter how much money you have. Because you could throw as much money on something, if it doesn't resonate, if it's not interesting, if it's not engaging, in the world of noise where there's millions of messages hitting a person every day, making sure that message hits, I think, is super critical. And trying to tune the different channels and levers that we have to hit our ICP in the right place in a very precise manner. To me, it almost sounds like a sharpshooter, where you can't just take a machine gun and just like go crazy.
Yeah, you can't spray and pray today. You have to be very precise, like a sniper, like a ninja.
There you go. So before we finish up, is there one tip, one way that we can actionable? Everything here today was actionable, but one thing that we can start doing that's a quick win, that's not too expensive. What should we do?
Wow. I think founder branding.
Interesting.
Like, I think that companies, startups, like the first thing that they want to do is to go on LinkedIn and register their company and start, gaining followers, etc. Have your founder. Invest on thought leadership by your founder. It will create a ripple effect that will be very difficult to create for a LinkedIn page that has 15 followers that part of them are not even your ICP. But the people in the founders surrounding or their network will probably be 80% of your ICP. Typically, if they come from the world of the problem, invest in that. I think that's like low-hanging fruit. They will gain visibility to future investors, to future employees, to future customers, to advisors, whatever. Like, I would start with that. And I advised a founder recently, and she's under the radar and doing things. Start with that. Do with that. Don't Don't spread anything out there. Like,
Pera, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Before we go, I do want to thank our house for today, Google for Startups, for allowing us to record here. I want to thank Rotem Simon for producing this episode. Please tune in for our future episodes to learn more about marketing for large and small companies, and hopefully we could save a buck and do some great things on a budget. Thank you so much.
Thank you.